Plato was not a professed critic of his time. He inquired into the nature of imaginative art and literature and put forward his theories, which are both illuminating and provocating. I would like Alka to throw lights on these two terms, illuminative and provocative.
See, we have earlier seen that Plato was favoring rationality. Anything which was against rationality was reacted by Plato. In
Right,
this sense,
exactly.
Plato's views were provocating. It was illuminating also because it was taking people nearer to the ideal
Thing or truth.
ultimate truth.
Ultimate
That
truth.
is why it is called illuminating. He was himself a great poet and his dialogues are full of his gifted dramatic quality. His dialogues are the classic works of the world literature, having dramatic, lyrical and fictional element.
Okay, so friends, after listening to the nature of Republic, after listening to the nature of Plato's dialogues, let me concentrate on the famous comment made by R.A. Scott James in his famous book, The Making of Literature. As R.A. Scott James has rightly observed, I quote, to the critics of the arts and especially literature, custom has given an independent place. In this respect, it differs from all other kind of criticism. Now, Alka, as you know, that here he has explained that the literary criticism occupies an independent place.
Right.
Anybody who is or who is not a writer or a creative poet, he or she is free to make any comment on any literary work created by other poets or other writers. Now, this is very unlike from other fields.
Right.
He has also given one example of an architecture. Suppose an architecture is the field person, he has right to make comment on the field of architecture. In the same manner, a gardener who is skilled in his art can make his comments or criticism on the skill of gardening, but that of a poet or may not be a poet, this is something very different. So thus we can say that since time immemorial, it has been customary to accept the criticism of art from a man who may or may not have been artist himself. Now, as against this view, we have the views from famous dramatist Ben Jonson. He says that judge of poets is only the faculty of poets and not of all poets but the best one. That means he wanted to explain that it is not everybody's right to comment on a piece of literature or any literary art. If a person belongs to that field only, then only he has a right or he can comment on the work of literature or literary art. Now friends, we have seen two opposite contradictory views regarding literary criticism. Now here comes the point that Plato himself was not a creative writer. In spite of that, he commented on the literary art of his time. He was not a writer by himself. Whatever ideas we have, it is presented in the form of a dialogue. Even after that, he has commented on the nature of poetry and the lessons that we have from poetry. Now, let us go to the slide that Plato's objection to poetry. What was the ground of his objection? Plato wrote dramatic dialogues rather than didactic volumes and did so with rare literary skill. One would expect such a philosopher to place a high value on literary art, but Plato actually attacked it along with other forms of what he called mimesis. He believed that philosophy was more important than the pleasure of poetry. He argued that most of it should be banned from the ideal society that he described in the Republic. Now, Let us see that what are the grounds on which Plato objected poetry. Plato's objection to poetry were based on three major grounds. The first ground that he objected poetry is ethical or moral ground, or we can also say ethical or moral viewpoint. His second objection to poetry was based on philosophical ground, and his third objection of poetry was based on emotional ground or emotional viewpoint. We will be discussing all these three grounds one by one. Now let us go to the first one. What were his objections on moral ground?
Dipali, it is very essential to know the meaning of the word moral or ethical. Moral and ethical has something to do with the idea of good and bad. We have some beliefs about what is good and what is bad. Whatever is good is moral for us, whatever is bad is immoral for us. We have known that for Plato, idea was the absolute thing. So idea was good for him. Whatever was nearer to idea, that was good for Plato, and whatever was away from the idea, that was immoral for him. So he condemned poetry on the ground that whatever is taking the citizens away from the idea, it should be considered as immoral. Whatever is taking them nearer to the idea, it should be considered as moral. So we here take the example of one of the poems written by Homer. Here is the piece of poem. But one man alone, his heart set on his wife and his written Calypso. The bewitching nymph, the lustrous goddess, held him back, deep in her arching cavern, craving him for a husband. These lines are taken from Homer's Iliad. The context of these lines is situation of war. During the war, the statesman is supposed to serve in the state, supposed to fight for the country, but his wife craves to have him in the house, and this is how a brave soldier is weakened by a rising eros of the wife. If a reader reads it, it affects the reader's instincts and makes him a morally feeble individual. It takes him away from the idea of what is good. According to Plato, to serve the state is the idea. It is considered as a good behavior of a person. But when a reader reads it, it influences him to do something immoral. It affects the baser or fecal part of the soul. So Plato said that there should be a kind of censorship on the poetry, because if we do not censor, then people would fall into different emotions. They will go away from the idea. In support of what I have said, let us listen to the Dipali, who would quote Plato.
Yes, as Alka rightly described the ethical ground of Plato's objection, as she rightly said, that if people are carried away by this ethical background, then they won't develop as ideal citizens for the ideal state. And as she rightly said, that for Plato, preparation of ideal citizen is more important than the individual's own being. So state is more important than the individual, and in this context Plato writes, I quote, "If we mean our future guardians to regard the habit of quarrelling among themselves as of all things the best, no word should be said to them of the wars in the heaven, or of the plots and fightings of the gods against one another, for they are not true. If they would only believe as we would tell them that quarrelling is unholy, and that never up to this time has there been any quarrelling between citizens, these tales of epics must not be admitted into our state, whether they are supposed to have allegorical meaning or not." I unquote. So, thus he objected on the ground that poetry does not cultivate good habits among children, and as a result, children, if listen to this poetry or if study this poetry, they would not develop as ideal citizens.
You are right. This happens with us also when we watch movies.
Right, exactly.
If something we watch on the movie, we feel like doing it in our
Right.
life.
Right.
We never consider that this is realistic or not in social context or what. And
Right.
afterwards, we feel certain conflict. So
Right.
Plato's comments can be applicable to judge or to evaluate our decisions also.
Our actions in the society. It will help to ponder over our actions on ethical or moral point of view, whether they are ethical or moral, and on the basis of that we can decide our further actions.
Now let us move on to the second objection of Plato, which is a philosophical point of view. Before we say anything, I would like to present before you two pieces of poetry. Let us read the first piece of poetry, which is written by the world famous poet Rumi. I am reading his lines. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a madness, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. The first piece of poetry suggests that human being is a guest house. Sometimes happiness comes, sometimes sadness. Variety of things happen. Things come and go. This suggests that nothing is permanent. These words, nothing is permanent, it is the philosophical assumption on which this poetry is written by Rumi. It has an idea of life which has come from the poetry. Nature of life we can understand from this piece of poem. But now let us see the second part of the poem or second poem. Which is taken from Homer's Odyssey. I am reading the second piece of poetry. Sing to me of the man, muse, the man of twists and turns, driven time and again, of course, once he had plundered the hollowed heights of the Troy. Many cities of men he saw and learned their minds, many pains he suffered, heartsick on the open sea, fighting to save his life and bring his comrades home. When we read the second line, what happens to us as readers? We doesn't get any idea about life. We do not get any heightened idea interwoven in it. Just it triggers emotions and temporal reactions. It drives us away from idea of life. On philosophical ground, Plato said that if poetry is taking you away from ideal truth, you should not use it for yourself. You should ban it in your country because it takes you away from idea.
Real truth.
It takes you in the world of the emotions, not in the world of the rationality. It drives you away from the ultimate truth. It doesn't teach you anything. It doesn't impart you any knowledge. And that is why it should be banished. This was the philosophical ground.
Okay, so here on philosophical ground we can sum up that anything which drives the individual away from the real idea or the ultimate truth is not allowed, because one may get carried away by this imitation or by something which is not real in itself. So this is the philosophical base for his objection of poetry.
Right. He favored cognitivism. He
Okay.
favored that statement should develop cognitivity in them,
They
not
should be-
emotionality.
Right, they
And-
should be rational individuals.
Yeah. That
Okay.
is why he banished this poetry.
Poetry. Okay, so we can say that in the Republic Book 10, he wrote, poetry does not lead to but drives us away from the realization of the ultimate reality, the truth. He says that philosophy is better than poetry because philosophy deals with the idea and poetry is twice removed from original idea. Plato again says that the imitator or maker of the image knows nothing of true existence. He knows appearance only. The imitative art is an inferior who marries an inferior and has inferior offspring. On this ground, now let us proceed with Plato's ideas regarding mimetic theory or his theory of mimesis. Now, in developing this theory in Book 10, Plato tells of Socrates' metaphor of three beds. Here, Plato referred the metaphor given by Socrates. The metaphor is of three beds. There is one bed which exists as an idea made by the god. This is the Platonic ideal or the original idea existing in the mind of God. Now, when a carpenter makes a bed, he is copying the original idea of bed existing in God's mind. So, we can say that the carpenter is imitating the original idea, or the carpenter's work is an imitation of God's idea. Now, when an artist like a painter or a poet is writing a poem or a painter is painting a painting, he is imitating the bed created by the carpenter. So, he is twice removed from the original idea, or he is twice removed from the ultimate truth. We can show this metaphor in the form of a chart like this. Here in this chart, we can say that there are three layers. The first layer or the first level is the